Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nally. Today I will be presenting to you my final thesis project titled Emerging from Homelessness, an exploration of affordable housing for homeless veterans. To start, I want to introduce myself some more. I'm a senior at RIT in the Interior Design program with an immersion in American Sign Language. I chose the topic affordable housing for homeless veterans because this topic specifically has caught my attention due to seeing reports of thousands of homeless veterans nationwide. I wanted to make a difference for those who have served our nation and help provide them to get off the street and back on their feet. Beginning with Mary Golden as my committee member, NCIDQ Assistant Professor of the RIT Interior Design Program and the Thesis Chair. Following is Lindsay Pritchard Fox, the founder and CEO of Tiberville. And lastly, Brett Garwood, CEO of Home Leasing Development. I wish to thank my committee members, Lindsay and Brett, who were more than generous with their expertise and precious time. A special thanks to Mary, the program committee chair, for her countless hours of reflecting, reading, and encouraging, and most of all, patience throughout the entire semester. So going through, I have my table of contents, and I will touch base on the topic of my thesis summary, my literature review, my research agenda, creative agenda, and then the overall conclusion. So beginning with my thesis summary my thesis statement is exploring the barriers to affordable housing for veterans. A research agenda will uncover the factors that lead to homelessness and how interior design can play a role in fostering the growth of affordable residential homes and community for America's veterans. So this interior design undergraduate capstone investigates the lack of affordable housing offered within the United States for veterans and the issues that contribute to homelessness. Homelessness amongst veterans is a rising problem. Current research reported from the Veterans Affairs indicates that veterans are at a greater risk of experiencing homelessness than other adults as combat, wartime trauma, and post-traumatic stress disorder. These stressors can contribute to depression, resulting in substance abuse, broken relationships, unemployment, and isolation. During this capstone research agenda, questionnaires were distributed to veterans and veteran service providers. Results revealed what homeless veterans experienced when honorably discharged and how well they received the help and support needed to transition to civilian life. Identified needs such as social supports, healthcare, and housing quickly became prevalent among soldiers returning home. Results also revealed what options exist for affordable housing as well as the limitations. The creative agenda of this capstone proposes concepts for prefabricated affordable housing in units and how through design, the needs of homeless veterans are best provided for. This addresses how affordable housing and the role of interior design can serve to support veterans at risk. So now we will begin going over my literature review information. To qualify for assistance under the Homeless Veteran Program governed by Title 38 of the U.S. Code, veterans must meet the definition of homeless veteran. The definition of veteran is a person who served in the active military, naval, or air service as was not dishonorably discharged or released. When designing a plan of action, states consider the following categorical eligibilities of homeless veterans provided by the Housing and Urban Development, which throughout this presentation I will refer to as HUD. So for veterans experiencing chronic homelessness who are eligible for Veteran Administration Services, the HUD vouchers, jointly administered by HUD and the VA, offer the most appropriate resources as they collaborate the services with permanent housing. For veterans experiencing non-chronic homelessness who are eligible for the VA services, the VA Supportive Services for Veteran Families program offers prevention and rapid rehousing solutions to both keep veterans in housing and quickly move short-term homeless veterans back into permanent housing. For veterans experiencing homelessness who are ineligible for VA health services, the HUD's Emergency Solutions Grant and Continuum of Care programs are the appropriate means to offer services and housing packages needed to move veterans ineligible for VA health services off the street and out of shelters into transitional housing. So beginning my research, I had many questions. A few were, what contributes to homeless veteran crisis in the US? How many homeless people are veterans? Why haven't we ended homelessness? And why are veterans homeless? A large factor of these questions lies in the lack of affordable housing. For example, one of the case studies I read stated that it is incredibly difficult for low-income individuals to find affordable apartments in New York. The current vacancy rates are almost 9% for apartments that rent more than $2,500 per month. The rate for apartments that are around $1,000 per month is a little over 2%. So why are veterans homeless? Veterans are at a higher risk of experiencing homelessness than other adults. The reason for this are not only related to the military. However, combat, wartime trauma, and post-traumatic stress disorder often contribute to a downward spiral of depression, substance abuse, broken relationships, unemployment, and isolation, which can then lead to homelessness. It may be challenging to return to non-combatant life without professional support. On a single Saturday night in January 2019, state and local agencies reported 37,715 veterans were homeless. Despite that, the United States government annually defunds the program that aid the veterans. There are federal and local programs that aim to help veterans who are homeless, but progress is often limited by the lack of nearby affordable housing. So HUD's annual point in time measures the scope of homelessness on a single night in January of each year. In January 2015, more than 1 in 10 homeless adults was a veteran, totaling 47,725 homeless. Women made up 9% homeless veterans, and 91% were men. California had a total of 11,311 veterans experiencing homelessness. That was the largest number. Following California was Florida with 8%, New York and Texas with 5% of the national homeless veterans. A case study raised awareness of the term homeless veteran. Many perceived homelessness as a shameful and undignified experience. Veterans described struggling to get their basic needs met, scrounging just to try to get by as best they can, and feeling humiliation, despair, and full of fear. Many questioned themselves, what's tomorrow going to bring? Why am I in this situation, and how do I get out of it? So, what solutions are being done to help homeless veterans? Shelter, structure, and support are terms that identify veteran service providers. Veterans agreed that affordable supportive housing programs offered shelter, structure, and they received support to get their lives back on track. The Veterans Mental Health and Other Care Improvements Act of 2008 officialized a program of supportive services to aid very low-income veterans and their families who either are making the shift from homelessness to housing or who are moving from one location to another. Organizations that assist transitioning from homelessness to permanent housing are given priority for funding under the law. Amongst the authorized services that the beneficiary organizations may provide are healthcare services, case management, legal assistant with financial planning, daily living services, transportation, childcare, and housing counseling. The HUD Veterans Affairs Services Supportive Housing Program is a collaborative program between the HUD and the VA, which emphasizes the housing first model of care. In this program, homeless veterans are given a housing choice rental voucher from HUD, which is corresponding with the VA case management and clinical services to sustain housing permanence as well as recovery from physical and mental health that may impact or result from homelessness. At the end of 2019, there were 9,749 veterans with vouchers. Many global nonprofit organizations help homeless veterans to transition to self-sufficiency and stable housing. Across all 50 states throughout the U.S., these organizations focus on building employment, volunteer engagement, education, and honoring our veterans who served our country. The literature review illustrates that it is evident that disparities exist between homeless veterans and their access to affordable housing. Now I will go into the depth of the research agenda. The original research in this capstone study had two purposes. Goal one was how well do veterans feel they can receive the help and support needed when becoming honorably discharged. And the second goal was what exists in affordable housing and what needs to be improved upon from the viewpoint of veteran providers. The data within this study was collected from an electronic survey targeted toward veterans and veteran service providers. These participants were contacted through various affordable housing and veteran service organizations that were known to fit the survey demographic. The first survey, directed towards veterans, comprised 20 questions. Out of the 20 questions, 4 were directed towards their personal experience in war, 4 towards the lifestyle of deployment, 7 towards after service life, and 5 directed towards their later years after being honorably discharged. A question asked within the survey was, what is your perception of homeless veterans in the United States? Results indicated that it shows weakness in the system, as well as some veterans choose to be homeless and do not accept help from others. An individual reported that veterans need support and encouragement to seek help that they deserve. Many view veterans as damaged, yet that is not the case. This leads to the lack of employment contributing to homelessness. Concluding that transitioning services need to be more contributive when helping veterans alter their military skills to civilian skills. The second survey was directed towards veteran service providers that comprised of 12 questions. Individuals were to share their personal opinions about participants' experience and existing perceptions they hold about affordable housing and homelessness among veterans. Homeless veterans face a wide range of barriers between personal and community. Personal barriers include lack of awareness of housing or mental health and medical treatments, substance abuse, and the impact comfort levels of individuals. Community barriers for homeless veterans include lack of affordable housing options. Affordable housing has long wait lists and approval time periods. An anonymous survey respondent shared valuable information, and I quote, "When men and women swear to defend our Constitution and voluntarily sign up for the military, they're told that the VA will take care of them after their tour of duty. Unfortunately, that's not true in most cases. According to the Congressional Research Service report written in 2014, only 42% of vets are enrolled in the VA healthcare. The reason nearly 60% of vets can't receive VA care is because the VA has established eligibility criteria that eliminates the majority. This criteria requires that individuals have a certain length of service, type of discharge, amount of income, or combat experience. As a result, many vets who separate from the military find themselves without the care they were promised. Many also find their health issues, trauma, and non-transferable vocational skills make it difficult to find a job and maintain housing. Programs containing higher education and knowledge for veterans help the individuals to become independent. Factors that are associated with new homelessness or return to homelessness among veterans are mental illness, reintegration challenges, and lack of employment. Reasoning behind these challenges is that while in services, veterans are provided with housing, food, clothing, and a paycheck. When individuals are discharged from the military, they must provide all these elements for themselves. These circumstances cause numerous veterans to struggle from transitioning their military skills into civilian lifestyle. So there were 4 different types of housing supports for homeless individuals stated by the United to End Homelessness. Number 1 was emergency homeless shelters. These are facilities that people often turn to first when experiencing a financial or home crisis. These shelters provide access to services offering support and short-term stabilization options to assist during rehoming process. The second was transitional homeless shelters. These programs that offer temporary residence for people who are experiencing homelessness. Transitional housing typically involves residence for up to 24 months with access to employment and other supportive services designed to help individuals find a new home and stabilize their lives. The third was rapid rehousing homeless shelters. This is a housing model designed to help individuals and their families find home as quickly as possible. This is considered a solution for non-chronic homelessness that places families in rental apartments and provides temporary assistance with community support. These services offer case management and financial assistance. And fourth, permanent supportive housing homeless shelters is a program dedicated to providing housing and other assistive services for chronically homeless people seeking long-term help. This provides safe and stable housing for individuals with chronic issues such as mental and substance use disorders. Those with physical or mental disabilities will be provided with permanent housing and intensive supportive care made accessible upon the individual needs. So, learning the difference between a homeless shelter and affordable housing solution for homeless veterans helped project the creative agenda for this project. The difference between affordable housing and homeless shelters is affordable housing will provide separate living units versus congregate spaces. In affordable housing, a person has a distinct residence to call home with amenities such as a private kitchen, bathroom, and a living area. Affordable housing is generally independent living in which veterans must engage in independent daily living skills. It is also housing that does not cost more than 30% of your household income. Homeless shelters are types of homeless service agency which provides temporary residence for the homeless, typically including meals, case management, support, social groups, and staff. Shelters provide tenants with safety and security from exposure to the climate while at the same time decreasing environmental impact on the community. So the primary focus of this creative project is to design a community for veterans. Various values and practices such as sustainability, human health, and inclusivity are responsible for informing individual design solutions, product specifications, aesthetic decisions, and content. So on the screen, you're reviewing the site plan, and this is a private facility at an undisclosed location by request of the owner that currently offers veteran support and rehabilitation in a rural country setting. The site was selected based on the demographic needs identified in the context of the capstone. The proposed housing units can be combined as modular units to create communal spaces. The single 584 square foot units are designed to offer dignity to their residents. The community of modular houses is intended to be installed on a single property that allows residents to live independently while benefiting from supportive services. The program of the proposed hypothetical project includes 20 housing units, a community center building, and associated landscape areas that are fully accessible with amenities to support housing homeless veterans. So the tiny modular homes are an educational tool to teach them how to maintain a home, cook for themselves, and live next to neighbors. The concept statement for the project, the Housing First model, suggests that a person's past does not dictate their future. Once an individual receives suitable housing, their quality of life improves. Homeless veterans will now have a place to call home. The bubble diagram showed the initial room layouts for the community center and affordable modular housing units, as well as a preliminary sketch of the typical unit floor plan. So the modular housing units, organized in a tiny house style footprint of 584 square feet, need to be designed to adapt to physical and emotional needs. These modular housing units for homeless veterans comprise not only housing, but also community buildings intended to enhance socialization and elements located on site many veterans need. Site planning considered minimizing environmental impacts and revealed the best response to topography, existing greenery, groundwater and drainage, views, and location. The organization of the building on the site provided the need for privacy with the benefits of development, focused around purposeful activity and independent living that integrate veterans with their surroundings. Modular units are arranged in the landscape akin to a neighborhood with a centralized community center. The modular units are gauged together to help maximize the interaction between neighbors and minimize the environmental impacts. The location is in a beautiful natural setting. The modular homes and community center take full advantage of the views of the surrounding landscape. So the purpose of the community center for affordable housing development is to provide a sense of place that residents matter to one another and to the group, including the feeling of belonging. The community center is a place that aids in affordable housing community, but also provides a place to gather, share activities, meals, and stories. The siting and planning of the community center was intended to be the core of the property and have the housing units surround the building in a rectangular form. The community center floor plan consists of a laundry room, the resident hub, fitness center, and multi-purpose area that are public places where residents can meet informally. The pairing of the laundry, resident hub, and fitness center creates a clear public zone. The multi-purpose room provides a full kitchen, dining space, desktop section, lounge seating, and pool tables. Other elements offered within the building includes the property manager's office, social worker office, restrooms, and a mechanical electrical room. These rooms are located in a more private section to increase privacy and reduce stress. In this project, houses line the border of the community center and courtyards provide consistent edges and definitions of public spaces. The parking is on both sides of the community center, which provides residents and guests parking spaces. This project strategically locates the community house as a means to monitor traffic and visitors to the affordable housing community for homeless. On the screen is a view of the relationship between the modular units and how they interact with one another. The porches of the units line the public walkways. Gardens perform as in-between spaces that residents can personalize themselves. And then here's a view of the exterior outside the pergola of the community center, facing the garden and modular units. A walking trail around the pond connects to the houses and places rest throughout the site. This render is displaying the multi-purpose room in the community center where group activities can be held. The multi-purpose room provides a full kitchen, dining space, desktop section, lounge seating, and pool tables. I also wanted to note that there is a floor plan in the bottom left corner that displays where the renders are being taken. So these tiny independent homes are designed to be sustainably manufactured and transported with ease. The sloped roofs, various stained cladding, and light wood accents of the exterior complement the rural architecture. Materials such as tilt-up pre-manufactured envelope express the construction and exposed joinery of the prefabricated homes. The interior provides sufficient access to daylight and space to meet individual daily needs. The design proposal took consideration of sustainable materials, the use of less energy, waste, and resources. By living in a smaller house, carbon footprint is reduced. Each of the units have space for living, dining, sleeping, full bath, and a small patio. Materials such as natural daylight, composite stone countertop, and bright colors will psychologically benefit veterans. So interior design features are part of a built environment and can trigger those with PTSD. Veterans preferred spaces with fewer pieces of furniture and walls that were painted in bright, more vivid colors instead of muted colors. The kitchen is universally designed and incorporates design elements that allow physical handicap residents to use their unit without restrictions. This includes kitchens where residents in wheelchairs have countertops with knee space, reachable cabinets, and cabinet pulls that accommodate restricted arm and hand movements. On the screen, you're reviewing the typical living space of a unit. Large windows located closer to the ground made veterans feel safer. This provided veterans with feeling a sense of security and allowed them to see what is fully happening outdoors, along with providing a sense of openness and allowing a natural way of utilizing sunlight to brighten the space during the day. The bathroom is a universally designed and has a door size for wheelchair access, a 6-foot turning radius inside, and a roll-in shower with ADA compliant controls. There is also a skylight located in the bathroom to let in the natural daylight. The construction and design process of the affordable housing community for veterans implement a series of sustainable strategies to ensure the well-being of occupants and the environment. The affordability and cost-effective assembly of houses can be achieved by material that are readily available and mass-produced. The selection of materials considered that 50% of building materials incorporate recycled content and low VOCs for paints and primers and the durability of materials. The finishes specified are intended to be used to illustrate how modular housing can be transformed into engaging, vibrant spaces. Material selection is also considered aiding psychological and social benefits for the veterans through the use of bright colors and incorporating natural elements. Concluding the overall outcomes of this Capstone project is homeless veterans, regardless of criminal record, addiction, or mental health problems, should be eligible for housing. The community is ideally a place where residents, managers, and social workers care for one another. It is common that numerous veterans suffer trauma during their service and so will return with PTSD and other mental health conditions. Homeless veterans need good, stable, and permanent housing, but they also need places that reestablish their emotions, pride, and sense of worth. The Capstone suggests that modular housing communities can be developed to incorporate places of relaxation and restoration, spaces for individual rest, areas for community events, and opportunities for meaningful work. Sites, prefabrication, low maintenance materials, and appliances can reduce energy and make the project more affordable. The modular housing units are designed to allow veterans to be self-sufficient and offer opportunity to participate in their community. Most people think that veterans who suffer from being homeless need or are okay with living in a shelter, but it is our obligation to establish permanent housing for these soldiers who have served our country. This capstone sought to provide a solution to the problem of affordable housing for veterans by considering the needs for veterans to provide them with support to transition back to civilian lifestyle through design. And thank you all for attending my final defense today. The floor is now open for questions and comments.
Thank you, Riley. Thank you for taking on a huge series of problems and kind of doing the hard work of engaging kind of really difficult and broad social issues in really not just an interiors project, but there's a whole host of construction and site planning and economic and participatory design questions that you raise with your capstone. I applaud your bravery and your fearlessness and approaching this, and also your sensitivity for not making it less than. It could have been a less than project,
Right.
And I appreciate that you haven't pulled any punches on the design. Could you go back to the site plan? I do have a few general questions that I want to talk about that, and in general.
This one or the original site plan?
This is fine.
Okay.
So just to clarify, this is rapid rehousing, or is this permanent? Because this doesn't appear in the shelter. It's permanent. Okay.
Yeah.
So I know that this is the challenge of this kind of project, that there's policy and then there's implementation. And if we're talking about affordable housing, and it's a permanent affordable housing, right? So
Yes.
is there a pathway to ownership that your project envisions, theoretically or not, one way or the other?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it's like as the veterans become more back to their civilian lifestyle and get better handling of their life and able to be self-sufficient, they can move out and go get an actual like house instead of like being in this community still. And then
okay, so the idea isn't that they own this property, but this is transition to more stable income, and then potentially other systems through VA or their own individual processes to get housing elsewhere. The idea isn't to live here permanently or own one of these.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, not to own.
Not to own one of these. Okay. So the site plan, positions this main building with a ring and parking lots around it. Is there a deliberate idea about having kind of the central bunker that's surveilling all? You had mentioned that briefly about security and maybe not surveillance, but having the property manager and the other social services be aware of and have sight lines to the other houses. Could you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, so I wanted the community center to kind of be like the core of the community, because I feel like it's a place that everyone can congregate together and interact with one another, instead of having it be like on the outskirts and like the houses all on one side. I'd rather them kind of wrap around a little so that it's kind of like that sense of community, like you guys are in an actual community and not just randomly placed throughout and feeling like they belong.
Right. One comment about parking, and it usually is a choice that there's all parking together and it's behind, and in the same way that the community center is a place for interaction, relocating the parking with the community center so that there's always a reason that people will interact with one another is a social strategy, social design strategy, versus having individual parking spots with houses. So I appreciate the nod in the direction of putting parking with the community center, but I would, in the next iterations, consider putting it further away from individual houses so that everyone goes to the same place and it's about the community, that they're in it together, just to reinforce that concept that you had mentioned.
Okay. Great. Thank you for that.
I really appreciate the individual kind of expression of individuality and gardening on the outside. Again, I know that this is a huge project. Your site planning, community, and residential, and site layout and social issues embodied in all of your design. But I would like to see also that there's this acknowledgement of a front and a back. So a private plot in the back, that's part of the view, and then the front of your house that you can control and garden and maintain.
Right.
Because all of these ways in which we allow for disclosure, that we allowed to participate or be seen in the front of our house or in the back of our house, are those moments where we can start to reintegrate with others. You know, in previous projects where we're talking about at-risk populations, the integration back into civilian life and or post-traumatic life, it takes these incidental but quasi-buffered and controlled spaces to have interactions with others in a safe way. If we could go to your interior shots a little bit.
Yeah, of the units?
Yeah, the units.
Okay.
Love the feeling of the community center, and it feels welcome and generous and open to all. And I like the line of sights and on the plan of the community center, where you also have individual entrances to social worker and property manager, and then residential entrances. You've made another decision about the both end. You want to have a person have that presence so that you know exactly which door to go to. That's where the social worker is. I have a line of sight and that's my neighbor. But there's also maybe a stigma related to that. And if there were doors that are also to the interior, so that you can kind of come in another way and you feel uncomfortable and then you discreetly join another side group, or, you know, hey, I need to talk to you about my friend kind of conversations. There are architectural spaces that buffer that so that there isn't any barrier for people feeling free to go to the social worker, the property manager, or other support services. You might also have in your multi-purpose or in your space, a multi-purpose room that can be for other health, mental health, and or kind of community spaces that come in and create that buffer zone between the all-out party everyone to maybe support services. And then go to the residential units. One thing that I know that they are sharing party walls.
Correct.
And the entrance, there is no entrance off the back or the bedroom, right? Those
Correct.
are all
Yep.
the windows, just on the side. So
yeah, they're windows.
In the way in which we kind of control how we're seen in a residence, you know, we want to have the ability to shade light, to be completely enclosed. So one of the things either in the facade on exterior, sunshades and louvers and protecting from solar gain, but particularly in your renderings, there's the absence of curtains and window treatments and or shutters on the outside, these ways in which we can open and disclose, because we're giving a veteran a container for themselves that has a facade and expression to the public. And it really gives that sense of I'm available, I'm not available, open and disclose their occupancy, if they're home or they're not home. There needs to be a way in which, you know, the big windows are beautiful, but if I don't want that, if I'm feeling insecure, then I'll need to close down. So I know that it's more than just curtains and shears, right? We're talking about a designed in sense of I control my space. I can control my disclosure to others and to the environment. it's interesting that your entrances are on the side, because that is kind of, you come into the middle of your house, which is your kitchen, which is in some ways maybe more vulnerable because it's in the middle of the unit, closest to the bathroom and closest to the bedroom, the most private spaces, versus having an entry in the front where you're given a preference of line of sight and then they come around. I think that's interesting from a security standpoint for someone who's feeling insecure and, you know, maybe is suffering from PTSD and has a situational awareness mindset all the time. You've got a line of sight of who's coming to my door. I watch them come to my door and then I let them in. So the spaces between the houses, I really appreciate that it's like your neighbor's also watching and your other veteran has got your back. And I like the way that you could have maybe turned that sense of privacy on its head. So instead of coming through the living room where you would expect it, you bring them around the side where someone else is watching them. So whether or not that was intentional, I think it's a good move. Then the other part would be, I know that this is design, but it's also policy. So you can design spaces for them to have influence on their yard or garden, and or you talk about materials. There is an idea of having materials that need to be maintained and a relationship to job retraining. So there's, of course, one approach, say concrete siding, which, you know, doesn't need to be painted, lasts 15 to 25 years. But there's this other approach is, what if it needs to be painted or stained or maintained annually? And right there's a programmed in job retraining, or even just a sense of ownership of your house and kind of civic and cooperative pride. So maybe expand in the same way that you've identified materials and put a sustainability mandate on them. There's that idea of time and maintenance and how an occupant can participate in the upkeep of this. So
yeah, thank you for that. Appreciate it.
I have a tendency to go long.
No, you're perfect. Your timing is just right. No problem. That's great. And excellent comments. So we'll open up for Brett and Lindsay. And Brett, I see you have your mic off. So if you'd like to.
I'll try. Thanks, Christopher, for your comments. I think of I do development, obviously, but I kind of like the design comments you made. You know, one of the things, and I agree with almost everything that you said, but one of the things I like about your site plan, and I think we talked about this a little bit, is first of all, the comment about the parking, putting it maybe all to the left there so you have more green space between. I think that could be really great. But the thing I like about your site plan is, when I first look at it, it feels like this really organic thing, right? It feels like it fits in the landscape. And when you see the renderings of the site plan, it kind of looks kind of organic. But when I look at the site plan like I'm going to build it, it's really all square, right? And this kind of stepping that you've done with the individual homes surrounding this has kind of created a more circular feel than it actually is. And I think that was kind of a neat thing. I also very much like this kind of like very social center where the community room and all the windows, I think from the those must be the living room side of the units, are all facing into this very social community place. And then all the bedrooms are kind of facing out to, in this what I assume is a pretty rural context. You know,
the woods, trees, the pond.
I can just imagine the scenario of being a person who lives here, being able to experience as my choice those two very different situations. And I think your site plan does something really special about that. The other kind of big picture comment I'll give is, I think you did a really outstanding job, you know, researching a topic and then bringing all those that information and knowledge to a very site-specific solution, right? One of the problems I think that we have often when we're trying to solve big social problems is we have people who sit around and think all the time, and we have people who sit around and design or build all the time, and those people don't speak the same languages. And to have gone through this process where you've kind of become very empathetic to the people who are going to live here, but also become knowledgeable about what's really going on that's causing their homelessness, and then designing something is a special thing that I wish I got to experience more myself, because I spend too much time trying to figure out how we're going to finance this whole thing, as opposed to how can we make it a perfect solution to the social policy we're trying to solve. And I think I'm really impressed with that.
Thank you.
If you had another semester, I think a neat thing to do, because you've gone from this very big picture to this site specific thing, is try to get back to the big picture and say, okay, I've created a site specific solution to, it's what, 20 or 24 veterans would live here?
20.
Right. For 20 veterans. Now, not every homeless veteran needs or wants this particular solution, but some portion of them do. And I don't know what that portion is, but you could start to think about, if it were 10%, you could do some research to find out what portion of veterans in New York State want to or need to live in a rural community and have their own unit that's not in a building. And you could say, if that's 200 today, right? What would it take to do 200 of these properties, right? In 10 locations across New York State. And if each one of these units is going to cost $100,000 or $150,000 or whatever price it might be, and you need to raise 40 million bucks. And what would it take to actually solve the problem? It would be kind of neat to kind of take that next step and go back up to the big picture. Those are all made up numbers in my mind, by the way, but I'm just trying to kind of show you like what would be the next step if you were trying to actually solve this problem.
Yeah, that's something I would definitely like look into following this semester if I have extra time.
So yeah, but thanks. And you know, the other thing, and maybe I'm about to give you advice that's contrary to what you're supposed to do, but your presentation was really good. The visuals were great. You presented it great. It was really wonderful. But you read like your whole presentation, and I think that's fine, and you did it well. But I actually think you know the content here well enough to have slides that give you cues to what you're talking about and just talk about it. You don't have to do that for the entire presentation, but in the future, I'd encourage you to try to do that a little bit, because it's more, your presentation was fine, it was good, but I'm just trying to encourage you to like do presentations where I just know you know this content well enough to just talk about it, right? It's really good. So anyway.
All right, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Really good work.
I'll just echo the thoughts in regards to Brett, that you managed to capture an empathy for your clients and the bigger challenges that they're facing in their day-to-day lives. And I actually think having a low maintenance environment is actually going to free them to go, you know, accomplish what they'll need to do to. I think what the thought of these properties is that it's transitional. There's a chance for upskilling, and that that's going to take a lot of work. So I don't know how much of their day would be occupied in one of their residences, but it means the scale of them is low maintenance, and also like maintaining them is low. So I actually really respected that. I did agree that there needed to be some window coverings. But I know the software you use is not super friendly to some of those soft materials.
Right.
But I think there's some really cool like rail systems that you could install and have it be not only like a picture hanging rail, but also like a soft surface that could give that privacy. And I agree that the location of your entry is thoughtful to I would say the nature of a veteran, and I've gone out to lunch with many of them, and they will not sit at a restaurant with their back to the main door. You know, they're going to make sure they're at the seat facing the main entrance. So I think the line of sight that you've been able to provide each of the prospective residents is very thoughtful. And I think they would like the idea of the larger windowscapes. And I would agree that the layout of the site plan is very thoughtful. I do think that there's ADA circumstances where having that close parking is going to be important. And that's why I liked how you kind of staggered. So if you had a resident that needed to be closer to the parking, that was something that or you could have, someone that with more mobility could go to the farther setback unit. But generally thinking, I would say that you were very articulate and empathetic to the project. So congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, great job. Congratulations, Nally. Okay, so at this point, I would like to extend a sincere thank you on behalf of RIT's Interior Design Program to our committee members and to Chris for joining us and providing such valuable feedback. I also see that our dean is on the call, so I just want to recognize Todd Jogel and thank him for joining us today. We're indebted to all of you for your valuable time and effort in providing feedback on our students' work and guiding them through the process. I also want to thank Kat Basney for helping behind the scenes on the call today. And I especially want to thank the audience members for your attention and support during the presentation. So at this time, the committee and the examining scholar will now enter the breakout room for deliberations, and this completes our final oral defense for Riley Nally. So you are all welcome to stay on for the next presentation while we jump into the Zoom meeting. And thank you all for attending today's session.